Hello and welcome to a new episode of The Ramp. Today we are super excited because we have Jessica Hartenberger with us. She is the head of people over at SuperOffice. Super excited to have you here on The Ramp, Jessica.
Thanks, Tor. I'm really pumped to be here as well and to have a chat.
Cool. Let's kick this off. Let's take a walk down the memory lane. So let's learn more about Jessica and your journey and what sort of sparked the interest for HR on your end.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Sometimes you have to make sure you don't go too far back on the journey. So let's see if I can keep it kind of short and sweet. But I got my master's degree in Norway and then, looked for a job afterwards. And one of the big areas to get a job when you're not perfect at speaking Norwegian like me was to join trainee programs. So I started as a management trainee at De Norske Veritas or DNV out in Høvik. And that was actually kind of financial controller based role, which sure I had done a little bit in finance before. My background's like in business degree, like an MBA. And I of course interested in it, but I kind of knew maybe it wasn't my long-term passion. So long story short, towards the end of my training period, I kind of weaseled my way into, you do different rotations around the company. I weaseled my way into working with leadership development, the leadership development team in DNV. And that kind of opened up for me to then continue within HR after my training period, right? So I spent a lot of years there working with internal communication and how we communicate and talk about all of our strategic ambitions, our processes in HR, all the things that are going on. And then I moved into recruitment because I think that's the sunny side of HR. I think it's really fun to connect people into, another journey in their career. And then I stepped out and hopped around a little bit, taking on more like HR generalist role, working with all areas of HR. And then I got an old colleague of mine reached out. I was like, at SuperOffice, we're looking for our very first head of people. And I was like, I just started a job. Like, I can't jump yet. And he was like, well, just come have a chat with the CEO, just hear about it. And I was like, okay. And then it was a really cool opportunity. SuperOffice has been around for 35 years now, but they hadn't had a head of people until I joined almost 4 years ago. So of course they were handling the HR things in different ways, but there wasn't anybody thinking of it from a strategic point of view. So it was like a really cool opportunity to pull in all these different things from my past into one role, one challenge, and build everything up kind of from scratch in a way. I mean, there's a lot of cool things already happening in the company. So I took it on, and that's why I'm there. And that's why I'm still there, because it's just constant, fun, interesting, challenging new things to work on.
Cool. So the company's been around for 35 years, as you mentioned. Could you give us a bit of details on SuperOffice, size of the operation, locations, revenue?
Yeah, so we are located in seven different countries in Europe. We're around just over 250 employees, and we're in the customer relationship management business. We have been for a long time, right? And so that's also something I think is really cool, that we've stood the test of time and we're still rocking and rolling 35 years later. So yeah, we just had a big company gathering in the spring for our 35th anniversary. We all came together, which was really awesome to be in one place at one time. So yeah.
You've survived the HubSpots and Salesforces and
They're still around. We still meet them all the time, in different settings, of course.
Yeah. But I think it's extremely fascinating. Company's been operating for 30 years with no HR leader or head of people, at least. So tell us a little bit more about what you saw when you came in, and what was your initial thoughts there?
First of all, I think a lot of the leadership had like the HR people mindset built into the way they were working. So it's not like it was this giant hole where there was no thought about the people or anything like that. But the thing that really stuck out to me, and I think everybody can say like, oh, the the company culture at my work is so unique, but I can honestly say from the different stops along my, career in different employers, different companies, SuperOffice has a very unique culture that stands out. It, in some ways, is even a bit quirky. We have, I don't know if you have heard anything about this, but we have established our own nation, our own country called Superland.
Whoa.
Yeah. This is before my time, of course. So it started when the founder, who has since passed away, Una Amundsen, we decided to go off the stock exchange back in 2008. And then it was like, this is our Independence Day and we're our own nation. And it all kind of spun from that. But we have passports. So all of us are citizens. We have passports. We get stamps for joining different events, different like milestones for the company. You get stamps for, some of them are tied with cash and bonuses for extraordinary jobs. So people are collecting stamps in their passports. We give diplomatic passports to our partners and other key stakeholders, like our board members. And we also have a flag. We give out medals for, work anniversaries, but also, Super Officer of the Year. And some of our other salesperson of the year, all of our different awards. So it's just embedded in the culture that we're like all part of this thing called Superland. Yeah.
At first, I was like, okay, that's a funny thing in a way, but it seems like something that brings you together in a way. That you have these symbols and then
artifacts, and it kind of goes beyond even those things are fun and they kind of are, like you said, symbols, but I think beneath all that, we are like a place where everybody wants to help everybody. And we're like, if you ever have a question across borders, we all, step in and help and try to share knowledge and work together as in all the ways we can. So, despite you take away all the Superland stuff and you still have that kind of a united group of people that are working passionate about the same thing, So that to me really stood out, and it's like a really great foundation, like really happy, like really strong culture going in, and people were very happy to be in SuperOffice. So that's obviously like a great starting point to come in and try to work on professionalizing some of the people parts of the company.
But did they have data on it? Because you mentioned they didn't have like an HR manager, and then they didn't have that full strategic approach. So was it just a feel that people were happy, or did you have an engagement survey?
That's a good point, because I have, since joining, engagement survey is something that we do regularly now. We're moving into pulses as well, but trying to find the right cadence. I think that's the big thing with pulse surveys. You don't want to overkill, but you need to touch base more often. So we're moving into that. So now I have measurement and can say people are happy. We see a lot really great. Obviously, we see things we need to work on, but really great, ENPS score, and people are engaged, want to wake up to work and come to work. But before I joined, they had done one survey, and that also showed, happiness, but it wasn't like a regular thing they were checking. They were just starting to get into it before I joined. So then I guess to say that people were happy is more a feel or a feedback you got from people. Yeah.
And when you joined semi-greenfield in a way, that you had the opportunity to build almost from scratch. So take us a bit through that phase. So how did you build that roadmap on the people side?
Yeah. So for me, when I first came in, obviously it's about the full employee journey, full employee experience from the minute you notice us out there in job advertisements to the minute you're, brought in, working, developing, and then you maybe leave us one day. And that's also an important touch point, that we are still having a great connection when you leave us, because we get referrals for customers and employees. And so I looked at like, okay, we have this whole journey. Where do we start? And I try to find the places where the employees would maybe benefit the most or feel it the most, right? Because you could have said, come in and get the HR system going, right? Which obviously we all know is important, and is something that we still haven't fully done and we're working on. But I've focused on like learning and development was a place where I really started, for example, to build up that learning culture, and we got a learning system into place. We also started working with recruitment. How are we doing this in a more professional way? Because before I came on, hiring managers were basically doing it by themselves and or using, recruitment partners. So yeah. So starting with the things that seem to be burning for that employee experience to be, a good one, or like where that's how I started. So, and then over the years, just keeping to tackle the different touch points along that employee journey. Yeah.
That's quite interesting. I like how you could then maybe make a solid impact out there towards the people early on. Like if, as you mentioned, it's very typical to start on the back end. Like, okay, we need infrastructure. We need to get the HR system up and running. But you took more of an employee or people perspective to that. But when we think about like the L&D part that you focus on and the recruitment part, what was the business need at the moment? If you look at the L&D part, were there any competency gaps that you needed to close? Any asks from the business? Any like transitions there?
Yeah, I think one of the big things was onboarding a new employee, first of all. Was a big one. When they come, how can we do this in a way that everybody gets up to speed more quickly with all the things you know about being in Superland, but also when you're more in your specific role or where you're part of the business where you're working, right? So that was one thing we worked a lot on, but also this role-based skill thing, right? So gaps, a lot of the places we started was in our own processes, like making sure that our sales process, we refreshed everybody on that and really dove in. So that involved in-person trainings as well. But we also spent a lot of time building up our digital platform because, so the whole philosophy we had was a 70-20-10 mix where you want 70% of learning to be on the job. 20% is coming from peers, mentorship, coaching, and 10% is coming from formal training like a conference or a digital course. But we felt like getting some of that foundational digital stuff going, but also you need that mix all the time where you're learning by doing, you're learning from a peer, you're learning. So we're really trying to build that up, which, we're definitely not perfect, but we've made a lot of traction, I think.
Yeah, and I think like this was back in 2022 when you joined, and then AI entered the room basically. So how has those initial MVPs on the L&D setup that you've built, how is that compared to today? Do you do more custom training because of AI that people can train themselves in a way?
Yeah, so the AI journey is also something where, I guess to put that short, we've been working on it a lot for a long while in our product, right? Injecting it in all the right places in our product. And that's really exciting for us. But then you also have this internal side with how are we approaching it for our people and upskilling them. And I actually would say that I feel like we're a bit behind there. So we have, let's say, we believe that it should empower our people, not replace them, first of all. That's important, I think, a foundation to lay out. We're not like looking for where AI can replace you, dear employee, right? But we were doing some things now to start. Okay, so we've always been encouraging, right? We should embrace new technology, and a lot of our people are taking AI and running with it, right? But then you also have this side where you need to make sure you're doing it responsibly with how you're using the data sets where, so we've been looking into that. But so we have just launched a new thing where we're focusing on how we're going to, I guess, revolutionize our AI use inside. That's what. Yeah. And I'm actually leading up this, which is kind of funny when you have a head of people doing this. You think maybe you'd have somebody maybe more techie. But for me, it's more like getting the right people in place. So we have built, a team of AI champions or evangelists. So people all throughout our company in different roles who are passionate about it. And now we're trying to we're kicking off a project now where they're talking to all their peers, gathering all the ways AI is currently helping us or could help us. What are our pain points in our processes and how can AI help? So we can get this gold mine sort of list from all the different areas. And then we can really prioritize and tackle like, this is the one everybody's talking about. This is the one we should bet in our process. And then what does that mean tool-wise? Right. So of course we have like licenses for Copilot and ChatGPT, and our employees are running with things and trying things. But at some point, you also want to take a good idea and scale it. So we're like in the middle of that right now. So then when you ask about the training and the upskilling, to me, that's also going to be a step there too, where we say, we're going to start using it in this way for sales in this part of the process and this part, which we already are starting to do in some parts. And then training around that, right? So that the right people know how to like adopt that in a good way.
Yeah. I think it's very difficult to make clear decisions on the AI strategy because things are moving so extremely fast. So if you commit to one system, if it's an LMS or I don't know, a company like Sana, for example, it's difficult because tomorrow they might be outcompete, and then you're stuck with what might be a forward-leaning company today, but a legacy system tomorrow in a way. And then in terms of like the intelligence layer that you're building in a company, how do we aggregate all the knowledge in the organization and make it very available?
Yeah, and I think it's a challenge too, because I think obviously AI is all over the place. Everybody's talking about, everybody's trying it, it's all over, right? And that's, I think, the natural progression when something comes out and it starts to become more everyday. But I think there's something too about that balance between go for it, try stuff. Don't wait for us to be like, you must use it like this. But at the same time, there's something around also making sure we're doing it responsibly and scaling when we find a great idea. Let's get all the salespeople to learn how to do this, right? Let's equip them all. So that's the journey we're on now. And we're like literally like just moving in that way now. So I would say we're like not necessarily on top of the game, but I think we're taking it seriously now and trying to, involve all employees and hear from all employees before we make decisions as well. Because if we just say, oh, we think we need this, maybe it's not what we need.
No.
So I think it's a tough one.
Yeah. Have you usually the people function gets a role somehow in the AI enablement change management play in the organization? I think that makes sense. But from a more functional perspective in the people function, have you seen any traction with some systems that you're happy with? Anything you would share with people listening to the podcast?
And we're exploring this more as well. Where and how we can use it. We of course are using like generative AI a lot when we're building job ads or getting suggestions for, gender neutral wording and these types of things. But the main place we're using it also is, I use it in my everyday to help me, with research, building presentation, giving me a good outline to start on presentations or bringing in input. I never just like plug and play AI presentation. I don't think anybody should. But I think it can give you a good starting point or things to think about that maybe you weren't thinking about. So it's like a sidekick. But we're using it in recruitment to block out people's identities when we have our first round of screening CVs. So you don't see a picture, you don't see a name, so that we can just blind screen that first stage. Then it's also embedded in our applicant tracking system that we use, where we also can get summaries of CVs. So I still believe we have a talent acquisition specialist now. She does everything in-house and it's been going really well. She uses it for the summaries, like quick summary, but then dives in. And I was talking to some other HR colleagues out in other companies the last week. I think we had a get together. We were talking about AI. And some of them are using it to fully screen all applicants and shortlist for them. And I feel like I don't know how you feel about this being in the recruitment industry as well. But for me, I think there's still something about knowing that a human kind of looked through your application in time. You felt
I agree. I agree. I think we've tested, 70 or 80 different AI tools. We've gone super deep and nerdy and down the rabbit hole on this. I think learning is that there are some systems that are proving to add value on the sourcing part, especially that sort of you can sort of source more efficiently. On the screening side, I think it's quite difficult to do that fully automated. And I don't know if both in terms of quality, but also candidate experience wise, I don't think it's there yet, the tools that we've seen. It might work from a employee or a candidate journey for blue collar workers because
very black and white certifications or qualifications.
Yes. And there are some promising tools out there that are doing this in a quite a solid way, both GDPR compliant and also in terms of really focusing on bias as well. There are some cool stuff out there.
Yeah, and I think that's something that we also need to keep exploring for all the different parts of HR where it can support us. But really, the philosophy we have is that it should empower us and enable us more, but it's not going to, like I said, not replacing, but gives us the time to spend our time on the things that really add the value.
I think one thing is like the tools with AI, but also on how companies are organized will be interesting in the future. So at least from what I've read, AI, there are some predictions saying that AI will remove or reduce the mid-management layer in a way, that the ratio employee to manager will increase. There will be fewer managers. I don't know how do you see AI's impact on the organization?
And it's a good point. And I mean, we first of all, at SuperOffice, we're already quite lean. We don't have a lot of management, so they would probably be like, "Wow, how could you do it with less than what we have today?" But yeah, I don't know. I think about it more that I do believe some types of positions out there would become maybe more redundant, but I also think AI will open up more jobs as well in a way. But you got the manager layer. That's an interesting one. I have to reflect more on that one, because you could almost argue that the people management is something that AI can't really replace. It's the relationships, and it's the emotional connection, and it's the psychological safety, and so like having that person. And that's one thing we actually saw. Now we just had our engagement survey results pop in, and I was super excited to see, not surprised, but excited that like the closest management, like the immediate manager questions were like sky high. People are super happy with their closest leader. So interesting to see if you started to kind of thin that out, what would happen.
I want to go back to 2022 when you worked on the learning and development and recruitment. At that time, when you were handling the recruitment aspect of the organization, you saw that hiring managers need to upskill. I assumed you need to create the playbook for how SuperOffice will be hiring. Did you see, or did you have any data on that you were struggling in parts of the organization with the talent density, or that you had some recruitment data indicating that you had a high drop-off rate on offers? Fixing recruitment is a bit sort of broad, but making sure you take the right actions is also key, right?
Yeah, and I think one of the first things I did, that's the thing, I didn't have the data. I mean, it was literally it wasn't great. It was literally like a manager would pay with their credit card on LinkedIn to advertise something, and then they would have
Home Alone party.
Yeah, they'd have like CDs and emails and folders, because where else are you going to have it? And so, I mean, there was all kinds of things that I think were like burning issues to be like. So the first thing I did was get a system, which has been fantastic. And because I didn't have a talent acquisition specialist and I was unable to do all the hands-on recruitment, I at least equipped the hiring managers with here's a system that's literally, and it's a really great system. So it really gave them a tool to like move their candidates along, to actually try to batch candidates into a bit of a let's get a final round instead of just the first person that was exciting. Let's just take them because I'm doing this all by myself and I want to wrap this up. And it gave us more data, back to your point, where we could at least track a little bit more the gender balance in the final stages. We can track. I'm not a huge pusher of time to fill. I don't know your thoughts on this, but when a talent acquisition specialist, she came on a year ago, we had a lot of talks about that. And I said, I don't think I'm going to measure you on time to fill, because for us, we're trying to focus more on the data around the quality of the hire in various ways, right? To kind of validate that the process actually bring us a quality person, and did the person, are they thriving themselves, and did they end up, fulfilling our expectations like we had hoped, and vice versa. So yeah, I'm not sure if I'm answering the question at all, but I didn't really have the data. It was just like, how can we start to get this in a much more structured way? Yeah.
Oh, very interesting. I think back to the time to fill, it's very dependent on the company and the strategy in a way. We work with some hyper scaling companies that are looking to hire, I don't know, anything from 100 to 500 people in a year. And then that sort of matters because you create that backlog and you need to make sure you have resources in place. But in general, I think the quality of hire is massively underplayed in a way. It seems like majority of companies are stopping to measure recruitment metrics upon hiring. And then how can you then loop back and learn if
right, if it panned out in a good way. And I think then we all know that like the cost of losing somebody a year in or whatever, 2 years, it's like, so yeah, but I think I can understand, of course, if you're trying to really like, if you need to grow fast or certain types of roles where you're maybe bringing in graduates and they're going to learn a lot on the job, and let's just get the really good people who have the right sort of mindset and the right starting skill sets, then you could probably try to go a lot quicker.
But when you're coming in as the first HR person or HR manager, at least, rarely there's understanding or sophisticated understanding on like what HR actually does in management when they haven't sort of had that function before. And there's also quite difficult to like measure the quality of that HR person. So did you set your own metrics in a way, or were those sort of enforced on you, or do you operate on metrics or OKRs or?
Yeah. So yeah, that's a good question. So first of all, in the beginning, like to try to even just like communicate or get a common understanding of what the HR, what the people, because I also love that we say head of people. I do, or people function, people team. I think, HR, we got to move that one out. But anyways, the point is I think trying to explain the employee journey right away and say, hey, we're going to try to work on all these different things. Of course, I can't do it in year one. It's going to take time and we're trying to prioritize. But that I think gave people an understanding, okay, here's what like the strategic work could look like. In terms of metrics, like we have one of our big moves now in all of SuperOffice is to be way more data driven. I mean, we've always been, but even more, we have like we have a really nice scorecard we're working on now, and the people area is a part of that. So overarching is this ENPS, the Employee Net Promoter Score. What's my key, like North Star KPI? But there's so many things that go into that. So I also, of course, I have a lot of big metrics around gender balance, getting more of a balance amongst employees, and that starts with recruitment. And I also, of course, look at traditional metrics as well with like turnover and all these things. But I also really like to focus on the ones that, the pay equity figures, the gender balance, some of the ones that are like more leaning towards, different directives that are coming and rules that are coming to make sure that we're, I don't know, more forward leaning in a way.
How do you think that will, on that sort of gender balance and diversity with everything that's going on in the world, and like especially with the US and the changes that have been made, and we've seen those international companies also unfortunately been going backwards into the future in a way. What's your take on that? Do you think that will also impact us here in Europe? That it will become a trend, or?
Well, I mean, I can start by saying like I have a very personal relationship with this because I am an American living over here in Norway, right? So I'm watching and listening to all my friends and family experience some of this, and some of my other friends in the US working with an HR, right? And just hearing how stopping DEI. I've heard stories about, management, came in and literally said, this project is done now, stop. And if you're a head of DEI somewhere in the US, like there goes your passion and everything you're working on. It's really scary. I also, on the flip side, feel really grateful that I'm in a people role in Scandinavia, in Norway, where I really am hopeful that it won't affect us in a way that we start following suit, if you know what I mean. I don't see that. I think it almost makes it even more important that we and other countries are sticking to it. It's like our way of standing up and being like, this is something we're going to keep working on because we all know why DEI is so important. You can't, the research shows you have higher innovation, you have higher creativity, you have there's so many benefits to it that I can't, it's stunning to me and shocking. It's really depressing.
In terms of where your company is now, it would be interesting to understand what's on your agenda now. You're a 35-year-old SaaS company. Seems like you have solid traction. Are you in growth mode? Are you also hit by the market downturn that started in 23, 22-ish? Or are you experiencing solid business and prosperity?
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of probably yes to both. Of course, we feel some of this, market times, but we are in a growth mode, like accelerated. I mean, about a year ago, we brought in some new management. We shifted out the management a bit. We have a new CEO come on board, a new chief product and technology officer come on board. You mix that in with the rest of our management team, which you have some of us that are, been around some years, but then you have a couple that have been around for 20 years. So we have this great mix of like people who know the history and maybe even moved up in the ranks to be in the executive team, mixed with fresh perspective, which I think is really important as well from a product point of view and other things to get in. So I think that also was it's a big change, right? We've worked a lot to kind of how we all fit into this big picture, how we all contribute to this growth, because so it's an exciting time. And yeah, of course, we feel the market, effects and stuff, but we're still growing and we're still determined despite it all. And it's going well.
Yeah. That's great. And how are you connecting the people strategy and the talent strategy to that business strategy?
Yeah. So I think a big piece is still this growth and development. And we talked about learning and development. I don't think you can ever stop thinking about that or working with that. So that's a big piece, really trying to upskill our people, work on the different skills necessary to go into this, like to support our ambitions, of course. And that's a big one. Of course, the recruitment side, again, talking about that, but we are actually I think we have 7 or 8 positions out now just for our product team. So that's also a really great message when you see some companies having to reduce, but we're like, no, we want the talent. We're still, so that's really nice to have that kind of situation. But then also really this how are our people doing is really on my mind as well. So like I mentioned, having the different places where we're raising up the employee voice and understanding how are you feeling? What are the biggest challenges? So we do a lot with that as well, and really been working on, just ensuring we have psychological safety, because I think that's a foundation. If you don't have it, everything else can kind of fall apart quite quickly. Which we have. We have it, but it's let's continue and let's make it even better. So.
And with that, the executive change that you've gone through now, how has that impacted the organization, the employees, the strategy, how it's impacted you as a people leader?
And of course, everybody has to get used to the change, but it's been really positive. And I think you can feel like we're fast. There's just traction and we're faster paced. And that did affect our strategy. We have launched our new strategy last year. And like I said, that's very clear what we want to do and how everybody fits in. So I think if you have that in place, the trust in leadership and acceptance of the change, and then you have this here's where we're all going and we're all part of it, it's super key. And you can always work on that and be better at that. But we do see even from the engagement surveys as well, that people do understand the direction and they get that their role in it. And so that I think is one of the biggest things, that everybody's on the same trajectory. Yeah.
And take us a bit into the engine room there. There's executive switch, and I don't know how early on HR is involved in that, preparing the organization for that communication wise. I don't know, maybe you can't share everything here, but we have a lot of HR leaders and TA leaders listening to this podcast that might be going through this. So how do you handle that from a communication point of view?
I think the number one thing that you need to nail is why is this happening? And being transparent and clear about it, right? But still the rationale, why are we doing it? It just needs to make sense for people. Or if they don't agree with it, they at least understand why it's happening. And then making sure you also inform in the right order. You should let some stakeholders know so they can prepare to be able to answer questions their people have, your managers and stuff. So they have a little time to be okay, I'm going to also help champion this. And let me absorb the shock for a minute. And then be able to kind of get into that mode where I can talk with my people about it, answer questions.
How have you organized the people function? Do you have specialists or generalists, or what does the operation look like?
Still very lean team. So the first role I brought on was an L&D specialist, but also it was somebody who was in the SuperOffice working on like the pedagogical side for like customer learning and that kind of thing. And it was like, great, you know the product, you know SuperOffice, let's try like when she was really passionate about learning in general. So that came first because like I said, that was one of my big areas I attacked first. And then the talent acquisition specialist came on a year ago. And then there's also a colleague in finance who is like partially working with me on all the analytics and the data, which has been something I wanted to kind of streamline and get as, move into a new era with that as well, which has been super helpful to have that data for making decisions or just understanding that side of the business. So it's still a very lean team. And then when you have colleagues that go off on maternity leave and things like that, it's like me wearing multiple hats for a period. And, but it's also something that is kind of fun to see how much you can do with a smaller team. And we're managing to do quite a bit. So that's great. And it keeps our everyday very, I think, challenging for all of us. Like my talent acquisition specialist is on other projects because she also likes growing in that area. So it's kind of a win-win.
Did you like immediately understand that you needed to go with that sort of specialist type of setup, or were you considering, I don't know, a HR business partner, a bit generalist approach?
Yeah, I think that would be obviously nice to have that. But for me, I thought about both, but it's also like we do, like I said, obviously HR was being taken care of in some way before I came. So we do have local finance colleagues in every country. They're doing a lot with payroll. They do a lot with the data. So we have some of that already in place. So then for me to be like, cool, how can we make bigger impact and bigger moves in some of these areas we know we want to focus on, like L&D and getting talent in. And I'm also working a lot with career growth is another big area we're working on. And I can use both of those specialists to chime in on that as well, right? So, yeah, I don't know. It was more also, I don't have an unlimited amount of headcount to bring in either.
No.
So.
I want to tap into the early career program that you've launched. Tell us a little bit more about that one.
Yes, that's been an interesting one because we launched that and we tried it for 2 years, and I said tried. So this is also, I think, an important thing to admit when something doesn't quite work and why, and figure it out. So we launched that for sales roles. In a way, I'm not sure. So we were ready for bringing in people who are fresh out of school. And I hate to say it because I've run trainee programs before, and I think the idea of it and the way we found people and brought them in was all great. But I think in some ways we failed them a bit because it wasn't a big enough group to kind of scale and do all the training together. You had a lot where the local teams needed to take it on top of everything else. And they did. They had mentoring and shadowing, and they worked with them and stuff. But it takes a while to come up to speed when you're working with, a software it's not like there's a lot of complexity because we offer a lot of different things in our software. So we actually learned a lot from that and had decided to put it on pause for a period and try to see about, I have some ideas on how we could resurrect it as well, because we learned a lot from it. So I also think that's really important to, hey, this didn't work. How can we, not that it didn't work, because we, brought in some younger talent and stuff like that, but it was hard to sustain. And I think the training programs I've been a part of in my past career has been in big companies, and you're bringing them in, and there's like more of a machine behind it, right?
Yeah, but it requires a bit more from the organization, and that's sort of difficult to handle sometimes.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you. Like, I think the bigger companies, obviously, like there's probably a dedicated team running it and all these things, right? And I think that's great. But I have also seen it in some of our, even partner companies we work with, that they're running great trainee programs. I think it has a little bit to do with what kind of role you're bringing in.
Yes.
And I think we tried to do it with a level in the sales organization where you needed a bit more experience. And we should have put it in at a very entry level sales type role. And that's where I think the biggest learning was for me. The early career, it keeps me up at night sometimes when I think
What's the toughest thing you're working on at the moment?
Well, I mentioned briefly, like we are working on, I don't know for those listening to this podcast, but if you've worked with like a career path framework or like a job architecture. It sounds like simple in theory, but when you get into actually building it and making it kind of resonate for employees and how can you actually use this to grow and all that, it can be a challenge. And we're deep into that kind of a project right now. And we're going to be launching our career paths in the new year. But more importantly, the process around it. So for me, that's it's a big challenge. It's exciting and it's fun. And our people have been, I think, really wanting something like this. But we've been piloting it out, testing things out, and it becomes a bigger thing than you think going into it in a way. So that's probably one of the bigger things right now.
Last question is more around towards the people that are listening to this. It might be up and coming, more junior people leaders. What type of advice would you give them?
First of all, I think if you're interested in like taking on more or getting into more of a like leadership role within the people field, go for it. I think sometimes, people kind of wait till they're everything on paper. I don't know, you know this in recruitment as well, but I really encourage people to go for it if they check off many of the boxes, but not all the boxes. So that's one thing. The other thing is if you do get into a role where you're working with all these things, I'd really thinking about this employee experience or this employee journey and like building your strategy kind of off that. Like, these are the touch points that an employee has. How can we make those awesome? Every single one. And there are many touch points with all those, many things within each part of the journey. But like, I think that's a great way to structure it because then you're always centering it around the employee.
Yeah. I think that makes sense. Doing like a mapping of the employee journey, like a traffic light. Where do we struggle? Where are we good?
Where's the most impact going to be like to start? Because obviously it can be overwhelming too, but where do we start or where do we see that we have issues and really need to kind of address first?
Jessica, thank you so much for joining the ramp. This has been really, really fun and really insightful.
Same. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.